So I'm officially sick, so that's fun. I'm sure it notes in my voice, but we're going to keep pushing on. So this is the last video of the South Africa series. I actually filmed this a few days ago, but it was just super scattered and all over the place. Not that the ones that I do post are not super scattered and all over the place, but this one was particularly incoherent. So I thought I would try again after making an outline, and we will see how it goes. So, the title of this video, when I was like writing down what I wanted to talk about from each country, was "Not All Africans Are One Person." So that is sort of the theme I'm going with today. So I was first going to start with, okay, so I should give like a bit more of an introduction than that. Going to Argentina and going to South Africa has really opened my eyes to the different ways Africans can be African, to the different personalities, to the different cultures that Africans can have. And while like I knew intellectually that Africans were all different people, obviously, and that Africans had different personalities. My family's African. My mom is very, very different from my dad, who is very, very different from my grandma, who is very, very different from my other grandma, who all are very different from their various friends, my various aunties and uncles. Their personalities are like human personalities, they differ. I knew this intellectually, but I sort of thought that it wasn't a thing in real life. I don't know. Anyways, I'll try to explain. So my experiences with Africans is my first bullet point here. So like I've said like a billion times at this point, my family is African. We are Igbo from the southeastern part of Nigeria, though I was born and raised in the US. We are from Florence, South Carolina, which is an hour away from Columbia, South Carolina, where there is a substantial Nigerian population for South Carolina, anyways. There's also one in Greenville. And so my experience with Africans has been living an hour away from this community, being one of very few Africans in my hometown. I think I had like another auntie, another uncle, auntie, uncle, another uncle, and then because we live in a town with a very big hospital, sometimes Nigerians will come through there because lots of them are medical doctors. Another uncle who's sort of a recluse. But so my it was like my family and then like people I can count on both hands, and that was the Nigerian community of my town. Nigerians for me, especially as a kid when we used to frequent Columbia more often. I know my mom has started frequenting Columbia again because her church is there. So my brother and sister are having a reversal of the experience I had growing up, in which I felt like I practically grew up in Columbia for some years. Anyway, so we always went to Colombia for events, for weddings, birthdays, wake keepings because funerals usually happen in Nigeria, and Independence Day parties and meetings. My mom is a member of the Nigerian Women's Association of Colombia, and I think my dad briefly was a member, when he still lives in South Carolina, of the Nigerian Men's Association. So these are people I've known my whole life. Then my parents have, all their friends who live in different parts of the U.S. Aunties in Maryland and Virginia and Atlanta, obviously in Houston, which is basically Nigeria's. I don't know. It's the Houston is to Nigeria what Miami is to Cuba, honestly. Anyway, so my experience was always like having like a mini Nigeria in my house, and then there was a mini Nigeria that existed over the phone when I heard my parents speaking Igbo to insert auntie uncle here, and then there was a mini Nigeria that existed in Colombia in my various auntie and uncles' houses, and I got to know these people very well because I had known them from a young age, very young, very very young. They knew me before I was born. And I noticed that my aunties and uncles have different personalities, that they're individual people, that they do not all act alike. But I think I sort of convinced myself that this diversity was due to them being like a carefully curated group from my parents. Like, yes, I know Uncle so and so plays the guitar. Meanwhile, this uncle hates music. Meanwhile, this auntie screams whenever she gets angry. Meanwhile, this auntie has never expressed anger in her life. Like, I know that. Or this one's very articulate in English and Igbo, whereas this one is not. Or this one is very prone to, I don't know. or this one's very religious while this one is not, or this one is very social while this one is not. Like, I knew these things in my head. But I think living away from Nigerians, technically, living an hour away and always having to go, like being Nigerian, that part of my identity was always something I had to go get. It was never something I was surrounded by. It was always something I had to go get, to go do. It was an activity to do that I did frequently, being Nigerian American, anyways. So it gave me this illusion that diverse personalities, like I said, were a result of my parents having chosen friends for who had diverse personalities, and not as a result of Africans just being individual people because they are. And I know this may not make sense, and I don't think it makes sense personally to me. I didn't realize I had this thought until I went to Argentina and found so many people who broke my stereotypes about Africans. um and then I was like, whoa, I had stereotypes about Africans. What? How did I do that, and how can I expect other people not to if I myself had them? So the common stereotypes you see, leading into my next point, um is I don't know if any of y'all watch like Nigerian humor on like Instagram. We have like these Instagram and YouTube stars who are always wilding out and doing crazy stuff. Um, but you have like the Nigerian auntie and the Nigerian uncle, the Nigerian father, Nigerian mother, or African in general, and they're always screaming at you. They're always belittling you. They're always berating you. They're always talking about some far off accomplishments that you know is a lie, and they're always like making you eat, or really obsessed with your grades, or really obsessed with images, and always very religious. Um, these are the stereotypes. And then you have like the worst ones of like the passive, demure African woman versus the man, very patriarchal, strong, demeaning towards this woman. And like I know, and they're all like very against like they're none of them are interested in like creative things, and all of them are very industrial and very like, or they're very like country. These are all the stereotypes, and like I know, like if someone came to me and told me these things, I'd be like, yeah, that's true, but insert blank 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 and blank do not fit the stereotype, therefore the stereotype is not complete. But like I feel like I internalized that somehow. Like I'm expecting everyone to act like these stereotypes except the people I know. But everyone else obviously acts like these stereotypes, right? And like I said, I feel like it's a result of not being around Nigerians, but having to always go to Nigerians. Nigeria was, like I said, a phone call. Nigeria was a wedding. Nigeria was an independence party. And then it was like my little tiny home community, which is like my home community. My house is what I try to say. And so you get this illusion of non-diversity. I'm expecting every African adult I meet who is old enough to be called uncle to be disinterested in talking to me, because that is how they are in the stereotype that I had in my mind. I'm expecting all of them to be super serious and only interested in talking about politics and drinking. And I'm expecting every African woman to be sort of demure, sort of, submissive, and blah, 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 blah. Again, had someone come to me and said these stereotypes out loud, I would have been like, no, you're wrong. But in my head, I'm thinking, I mean, this is how they are. It's just that my parents did a good job choosing their group, or not a good job choosing their group, or however I wanted to define it. So what I loved so much about going to Argentina and doing my research project on Ghanaian and Nigerian immigrants, and then going to South Africa and now being in Morocco, is that all of these stereotypes have been like shattered. I don't even know how to define the word African at this point, which is something I love so, so, so much. But this video is about South Africa, so I'll try to talk about what I learned from South Africa. And so basically, I just met people. I just met people who just broke these stereotypes. I just met people who broke every stereotype that I had. And for once, it wasn't like people like me, my age, born and raised in the U.S., because we can do whatever we want. I don't have stereotypes about us because we wild out. You cannot say anything about a Nigerian, someone who has Nigerian parents who was born in the U.S., because they just come. You could be anything. You could be anything. But Africans from Africa, I guess I had these stereotypes, but then I went to Africa and I was like, well, I guess those all flew straight out the window. So you meet people like my friend um, Edwin, who's from Kenya, who's got this like, the like tall, dark, handsome vibe about him. The like the one in control, very intelligent, has his little environmental project going on. You meet people like George, who can dance like it just doesn't even make any sense how he dances as well as he dances American social dances that like I can't dance and I'm American. And his spirit and his like fun and his like childlike gentle nature. You meet people like that to my friend Wilson with his super soft voice all the time, and he's so comforting and so just gentle and non-threatening at all times. He's always chill. Like this is just how he talks, and you just want to hug him because he's so cute. He's just so adorable. You meet people like Alicia, who was one of our program coordinators, who was like one of those like high heel wearing, like blonde braid flipping, independent, strong woman. Let's go, hip swaying. Let's go. You meet people like that. To my RA Mubiana, who is super into American pop culture. She like super into the slang, who's super laid back and just chill. Super chill. Also another very strong woman. You meet people like Moses, who gave us our tours for our group, who is originally from Mozambique. And he lives in Cape Town, and he's also just a really chill person at all times. And some of the stuff that came out of his mouth, you'd be like, what? How did that just come out of your mouth right now? Like, how are you acting like this? Especially with my stereotypes, I'm like, but you're not an uncle. You're just Moses. You're just a guy who just happens to be from Mozambique. To my host parents in Bokop, who were Muslim and colored and barely spoke English. Their first language was Afrikaans. And seeing their hospitality and having just taken an Islam class um, last semester in the US, meeting them and living in their house and seeing that their origins were so different from like my family's origins were so different from the origins of someone who a 5-minute drive away, and learning so much about their community and and it just being so different from what I'd ever described thinking of Africa ever. Like the butter chicken, the verses of the Quran above the door. Now I'm in Morocco, so imagine. But the verses of the Quran above the door, the mosques, like 5 mosques within like an eye and like 1 eye distance. And I was like, this is really wild. The food that came from actually like Indonesian and South Asian culture and Malaysian culture, that is now a part of South African culture, that is now African. I would just have never ever thought, like, what do you mean not all Africans eat plantain and farina and egusi and things like egusi and obono? Like, what do you mean they don't all do that? That was my Africa. My Africa was Columbia, South Carolina, and that is what the Africans did in Columbia, South Carolina. And the ones that lived in my house. That's what they did. Anyone else? Oh yeah, my friend Daniel, who is a hoot as well, and he does martial arts. And the way he would, like, such a complex, emotional person. Also, I don't know, like the kind of person who'll be like up one moment and then like down the next. You never know what to expect. And all of these people were just African youth, except like Alicia and Moses and my host parents, obviously, just being youth. They were just young people, just being young people that just so happened to be African. I had never in my life thought of someone and then ended the sentence with, and they just so happen to be African. I would start with, they're African and blank, 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 blank. It didn't occur to me that Africa was just a classification for people born on the continent. Africa, being African, was a personality to me. And I'm so glad that it's been broken, because life is so much richer for knowing all these people who do not fit into my stereotypes, which I was not too fond of anyways. So I really want to thank everyone who made the scholarship possible, from my donor to President Samhat to Wofford Financial Aid to my friends who helped me write these proposals, because being African is such an important part of me. having African parents and having that culture is something that it's the thing I'm most proud of in my life. It's the thing that I'm most scared to lose. So having that part of me amplified in a way that I had never even been able to imagine, especially going from Argentina and then to South Africa and then to Morocco. I love that being African, even though it's a small part of me, isn't a small thing. I love that African is not a personality. I love that there is room to dance and do whatever you want under the umbrella of Africanness. And that is one of the things that makes being African so cool, is that we have so many people who just like, you just meet the coolest people in Africa, honestly. I just love that being African is no longer a catch-all term for me. I love that. I love meeting really strong women who are African. I love meeting, I love dancing to hip hop in Africa. I love hearing off-color things in Africa. Like I love the fact that Christianity is not a religion in all parts of Africa. That English is not, the official language in many parts of Africa, although I knew that not even just intellectually before I came. But all these systematic breakdowns and predicting why an African would immigrate or what being African means to other people and not being able to make those predictions anymore has just been so great for me. So I feel like it's really a lesson in ignorance, in that you really think you know something because of your positioning, because of your background, but sometimes you really just cannot know. Like if you asked me, if you put me in a lineup of people and were like, which one of you thinks you know the most about Africans, which one of you thinks you have the least prejudices about Africans, I'd raise my hand every time. But yet I went to these countries and systematically had all these prejudices and stereotypes that I didn't even know I had internalized, shut down. I was super surprised when I met a woman who didn't act like an auntie. You see how auntie is like a character? It's not even a person. Auntie is a character, and uncle is a character. It's like a type of entity is auntie and uncle. And there's people I'm calling uncle. I make friends with people who, in the US, I'd call them uncle, but here I can just call them by their name, like Iego. I can call him uncle, or I can call him Iego. Like, we are on equal footing. And I think that another thing that made the revelation so dramatic, is being on equal footing for the first time in my life with Africans. Not having the power dynamic of auntie uncle really shows you a lot of things when you're not expected, when you didn't grow up with this person's children, when you didn't live at stay at their house under all their rules and all this stuff. Being able to interact with people, like aside from the fact that they're African, really makes you realize, oh, African is not all there is to a person who was born in Africa. I think the power dynamic really it gives you distance. I don't know if it's a good distance, because you don't discover all of these things when that power dynamic still exists. You're always relegated one step down, and so you're always viewing from down. But when you're allowed to make friends with Africans, to make enemies with Africans, to have romantic relationships or deny romantic relationships from Africans, and a bunch of other things, to babysit Africans, to work with Africans, your stereotypes just like pop one by one. They just pop one by one. And I wish that everyone who has prejudices about a specific group could have the same experience that I had, could have the experience where the power dynamic is shifted and you're forced to interact with people as people. And when you're forced to interact with people as people, you view them as people. So that's pretty much that video. Thank you to everyone who gave me that piece of my identity back that I didn't even realize was like broken or missing. So this ends the Africa series. Thanks for watching.